So, imagine you were tasked with building the most complex, sophisticated machine in the known universe. What would you build it out of? Well, the answer might actually surprise you, because nature pulls it off using just 4 basic materials. Today, we are going deep, and I mean deep, into those fundamental building blocks, the 4 primary tissues that make up the very fabric of you, me, and, well, all of us.
All right, before we jump in, just a quick heads up. This is the advanced course. We're going to be operating on the assumption that you're already comfortable with the basics of cell biology. If you want a bit of a refresher, we've got a great foundational explainer on this topic you can check out. But for everyone else, let's get into the nitty-gritty of our biological architecture.
Take a second and just look at this number, 32 trillion. That's the best estimate for how many cells are in your body at this very moment. It's just a staggering figure, right? A literal universe of tiny individual units. So the big question is, how does the body possibly organize all of that cellular chaos into a single functional being?
Well, the answer starts right here, with tissues. This is the very first and maybe the most critical level of organization. Tissues are basically communities of similar cells that all work together to perform a specific job, forming the fabric of our bodies. And you know the term tissue is perfect. It comes from an old French word, tissu, which means to weave. And that's exactly what they do. They weave our cells together.
And what's wild is just how recently we've even been able to see this microscopic world. The study of tissues, which we call histology, is really quite young. I mean, we needed the microscope just to get a peek, but the real breakthrough, the moment things got clear, wasn't until the 1850s, and it came from a happy accident when a scientist named Joseph von Gerlach forgot about a piece of brain tissue soaking in some dye, and in doing so became the first person to truly see the beautiful, intricate web of our cellular networks.
Okay, so here's our game plan. We're going to break down the 4 primary tissue types, and we'll think of them as the foundational pillars of our biological architecture. We've got epithelial tissue, the boundary, connective tissue, the matrix, muscle tissue, the engine, and nervous tissue, the network.
Let's kick things off with our very first pillar, epithelial tissue. Your best bet is to think of this as the body's ultimate bouncer, its gatekeeper. It's what forms all the boundaries between different environments. Now, all epithelial tissues kind of play by the same core rules. The cells are packed together incredibly tight, like bricks in a wall with almost no mortar. And here's a crucial detail. This tissue is avascular, which is a fancy way of saying it has no blood vessels. So you might be wondering, how does it get nutrients? Well, it depends on the layer of connective tissue just beneath it to pass up all the supplies. This design makes it a fantastic protective barrier, but also a really selective gate for things like secretion and absorption.
What's really elegant is how we classify all these different epithelial tissues. It's a surprisingly simple system based on just 2 things: the number of cell layers and the shape of the cells. If it's 1 layer, we call it simple. If it's more than 1, it's stratified. Then you just add the shape. Squamous cells are flat, cuboidal are cube-shaped, and columnar are tall and skinny. And the structure always matches the function. A single thin layer in the lungs is perfect for gases to pass through, while thick multi-layered skin is built tough for protection.
Of course, biology always has a few curveballs to throw at us. Let me introduce you to pseudo-stratified columnar epithelium. Yeah, it's a mouthful. The key is that word pseudo, which means false. This tissue is a bit of a trickster. It looks like it's layered because the cell nuclei are all over the place, but it's really just a single layer of cells. You find this stuff lining your respiratory tract, using its tiny hairs to sweep mucus along.
And for an example of a truly dynamic tissue, look no farther than transitional epithelium. This is what lines your bladder, and it is a master of disguise. When your bladder's empty, the cells on the surface are all plump and cube-like. But as it fills up with fluid, those same cells stretch out and flatten like pancakes. It's an incredible design that lets the organ expand dramatically without tearing.
Okay, on to our second pillar, connective tissue. Now, this is the most abundant and, frankly, the most diverse tissue in the entire body. If epithelial tissue was the brick wall, then connective tissue is everything else. The mortar, the steel rebar, the foundation. It's what holds it all together.
The single most important feature of any connective tissue isn't its cells, it's what's between the cells. It's this stuff called the extracellular matrix. This matrix, a kind of cocktail of gel-like substances and protein fibers, is the secret to its incredible versatility. The most famous of these fibers is collagen, a protein that's so tough, pound for pound, it's actually stronger than steel.
Yeah, let that sink in.
So who builds this incredible matrix?
Well, the cells come in two main flavors. You have the immature blast cells. Think of them as the construction crew. They're busy secreting all the fibers and ground substance. Once they've built the matrix around themselves, they mature into less active site cells, which then shift into a maintenance role, just keeping the tissue healthy.
And just look at the diversity here. It is absolutely incredible. Fat, tendons, bones, cartilage, even your blood. All of these are classified as connective tissue. It really hammers home how this one tissue type can be a soft cushion, a rigid support structure, and a liquid transport system, all at the same time.
All right, let's move on to our third pillar, muscle tissue. This is the body's engine. What makes this tissue so special is its ability to turn chemical energy from your food into pure mechanical force. Its entire job is to contract and create movement.
And we have three distinct types of it. There's skeletal muscle, which is what you consciously control to, move your skeleton. Then there's cardiac muscle, found only in the heart. It looks a bit similar, but it's completely involuntary, which is probably a good thing. And finally, we have smooth muscle. You find it in the walls of your organs, and it works behind the scenes, also involuntarily, to move substances through your body. Now, cardiac muscle has a secret weapon. It's these things called intercalated discs. These are specialized junctions that basically hardwire all the heart cells together. They act like tiny communication channels, letting the electrical signal to beat pass from one cell to the next almost instantly. This is what ensures that every single cell in your heart contracts at the exact same time, creating one powerful, unified pump.
And that brings us to our fourth and final pillar, the master communication system, nervous tissue. This is the body's command and control center. It makes up the brain, the spinal cord, and that vast, sprawling network of nerves that reaches every last corner of your body.
Nervous tissue is really built from two main types of cells. First, you've got the neurons. These are the stars of the show. They're the ones generating and firing off all those electrochemical signals. But they can't do it alone. They're completely dependent on their support crew, the glial cells. Think of the glia as a pit crew. They protect, insulate, and feed the neurons so they can do their high-speed job. And if you look at the structure of a neuron, it's just a perfect case of form following function. Information comes in through the bushy, branch-like dendrites. That signal is then processed in the main cell body. And if the signal is strong enough to get the green light, it gets fired down that long cable, the axon, to the next cell in the chain. It is a high-speed, one-way street for information.
So we've broken down the four pillars. Now let's zoom back out and appreciate the grand design. Because these tissues never work in isolation. They assemble together to create organs, which are functional masterpieces. The stomach is a perfect example. Its inner lining is epithelial tissue secreting digestive juices. Its wall is smooth muscle, churning the food. Connective tissue holds the whole thing together, and nervous tissue is there to control the entire operation. Four simple pillars, coming together for one incredibly complex function.
Okay, so to wrap up everything we've talked about in our deep dive, here are the 5 main takeaways. First, the body's mind-boggling complexity, all those trillions of cells, is elegantly organized into just 4 primary tissues. Second, epithelial tissue is all about creating boundaries and linings. Third, connective tissue is the diverse and supportive matrix holding everything together. Fourth, muscle tissue is our engine, built for contraction and movement. And fifth, nervous tissue is the body's high-speed communication network.
And it's so important to remember why all this detail matters. The study of tissues when they're diseased, a field called histopathology, is an absolute cornerstone of modern medicine. It's how doctors diagnose countless conditions, from infections to cancer. And of course, just a friendly reminder that this explainer is for informational purposes only and is certainly not medical advice. So I'll leave you with this question to think about. The human body is constructed from just 4 fundamental types of material, yet it achieves a level of complexity, adaptability, and self-repair that completely outclasses any machine we've ever engineered. It really makes you wonder, what's the secret ingredient? What's that spark that elevates these simple building blocks into life itself?